going to call the executive committee to order at 7:01 p.m. Take a roll call. Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Dembinski?
Here.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Winiarski?
Here.
Ms. Wasilk?
Here.
And the chairman is present. We have one absence, Auditor Kakuka. I would entertain a motion to excuse. Mr. Miller?
So moved.
Mr. Goodell? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have one item on the agenda today submitted by Councilman Winiarski. It's a resolution allowing or requiring retirees to subscribe to their retirement programs, health, medical, dental benefits, and prohibiting them from subscribing to the city benefits. Mr. Winiarski, would you like to start us off and tell us a little bit about this resolution?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
One moment here. First of all, thank you very much for entertaining what I've put in front of you here. I truly appreciate the fact that this is financially driven and there's a lot of emotional based reaction to what I put here. It's not easy when you attach the person that you've worked with for 30 years. But in the circumstance of retire, rehire, I'm seeing more and more communities ask for concessions to bring someone back. I don't think that's unreasonable after I looked at the numbers. What I've asked for here is concessions with regards to the medical coverage. I was looking for things we could do. I arrived at that medical coverage after a series of emails, a conversation with our OPERS representative saying that we did have the opportunity to ask for that concession and that would be appropriate. Since then, I understand the mayor's done some looking into this, and we have a situation where I've got information and the mayor's got information. To the mayor's credit, he played the trump card and got a legal opinion. Perfectly appropriate. I should have done the same thing first. His legal opinion says that using the medical benefits is not the avenue to go, and it probably would not hold up in court. But I still at the same time believe concessions are appropriate. And if you take a look at the spreadsheet here, if you go to the page that has the colors yellow, blue, and green on it. In column A, you'll see a list, the headlines or the line items for not a benefit package, but a compensation package for a person that works for the city. The items that are in yellow are the line items that are used to calculate an FSA, which is what is used to calculate what your retirement payment will be. If you go to column B, that's what the average supervisor is compensated in our city. If you go to column C, that shows once a person retires, that is what they're compensated, that's what their payout is. The only thing obviously the factors are the items that are in yellow, and then they lose the medical and those medical benefits because that's covered by PERS, Medicare, Medicaid. If you take a look at column D, that is the total compensation of a person that's retired and comes back as a rehire. That is dandy. I don't see retirement as a make a lot of money in retirement program. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for concessions. I do have to admit one thing. I put together a package here that outlines some areas and some local people that have given consideration when they retire and come back. I offer you Steve Sayers. The numbers I gave you there is incorrect. I pulled that off of Buckeye Institute. The actual numbers Mr. Sayers left, or when he retired, was making $130,000 with the school system. He came back at $97,500. Was that $29,000 concession. In addition to that, he started a $7,500 grant and scholarship program. That was just totally his. But it's an example of a concession and giving back to after you retire and you're rehired. The former principal, Mike Gillum, did something He left as principal, came back as a building and lands administrator for about $70,000 less. You take a look, we'll skip over the department, it's a repeat of what you see in our local schools here. But Fairfield County, man, I give them credit, I think they've really thought this through. They don't want to tie the local administration's hands when it comes to hiring the most qualified candidate. But they do ask for a 20% concession, and I think if you read through the reasons that Fairfield County created this policy, it's fairly consistent with where my opinion is with it. I feel that, given the opportunity, I don't feel it's unreasonable. I know there are people in here that disagree with me, and that is perfectly fine, but the conversation's gonna happen with the next, or I'm gonna have this conversation at the next negotiations when it comes up before us. We can either discuss it now or we can discuss it then, but if that concession be 20%, there's still, I mean, a rehire person would still be $30,000 ahead. I don't think it's unreasonable, and that is the basis of what I bring to you. With that, I thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Wasilk?
Perhaps we can talk about, it looks like there are some concessions already being made. If I'm looking at the memorandum that we got from the mayor. Mr. Mayor, could you talk about, let's start from what the concessions are that are being made. It looks like there are concessions being made. I may not be reading this correctly.
What happens, and council, if you look in this little packet I gave, I think the last page, an example of an ordinance, this actually ends up with an ordinance with council accepting an employee retiring and rehiring. So anytime an employee does that, it has to be accepted by council. Within that ordinance, it talks about that the employee be deemed a new employee, which sends them back as if this was their first day of work. So some of the things that an employee would lose, say an employee with 31 years of service with the city would lose the $8.25 per year per month stipend for longevity. That's a $3,069 concession just for 1 year. Over a 5-year time period, that's $15,345 that employee would save. We have employees that have done this 5 years ago, and that's why I'm going by the 5-year, just to show you how much total the city has saved. When an employee retires and comes back, they lose all their vacation. They would have accumulated 5 weeks vacation, and that very first year, they go back to zero. And we have working supervisors, so they're actually productive for those 5 weeks, instead of paying them to stay at home or going on vacation, whatever they do. So they lose 5 weeks vacation. And believe this or not, there's actually costs associated with, and all departments don't do this, most of them do. I don't think the wastewater treatment plant does. But when a supervisor goes on vacation, somebody has to be appointed to be supervisor. So they get paid the higher rate while the supervisor's gone. And then it's a snowball effect. There's actually some times when that operator or somebody lower down the line has to be, or a laborer might have to be promoted to operator. So there's kind of a snowball effect for 1 year, and this is just, and I actually figured this on the low end, $1,177.64 savings for that just first year. Take that, and then the next 4 years, they do get 1 week's vacation, so we're actually only saving 4 weeks. That's $6,400 a year, and these are numbers that came from Gwen, and this is on the low end. One of our lowest supervisors, it's about $1,604 for a week's benefits. So that's where I'm coming up with the savings, and then times 4. Again, those costs associated with replacing the supervisor when they're gone is $942 a year for those 4 years, and that's $3,700 savings. And in all the contracts, you might be able to negotiate out, you might not. But anybody that doesn't receive insurance gets a $300 stipend for not getting insurance. And I've gotten an opinion from our labor attorney who has said, the way those contracts are written, those people would be due $300 a month. So over 5 years, that's $18,000. So over a 5-year time period, the people that have retired 5 years ago has saved the city of Amherst $71,957 over 5 years. It's a $14,391 average Of course, the front end would be more than the rest.
Per person?
Per person, one year, 5-year savings, retire, rehire, $71,000, almost $72,000. Realized savings. If you do the math, I think Mr. Winarski provided a chart and showed all the insurance costs, not just the premium, but actual insurance costs that range from $5,000 or $6,000 to $19,000. I did my best to come up with the average. I had some help with Gwen. And we came up with a $14,838 average for the average cost of insurance per employee. So even if you wanted to consider that as some savings, it's only $500 savings a year per employee if you're using the health benefit. But I think later on I'm going to show you a letter from our labor attorney, Mr. Loftman, that shows we really shouldn't visit taking away the health insurance. He's showing a couple cases where it's not a good idea. Farther on in the middle of that packet, same thing Mr. Winarski talked about, it's the handbook. And I did call some people at OPERS. I've been on several websites. Everybody referred to me, there are no other policies other than the policies in the handbook. I mean, we're the wording. So if you look on the back of that retired reemployment page, outlined in blue, it says, and it talks about it extensively throughout, but this is the best sentence. While reemployed, your employer must provide your primary health care coverage. So it's saying must provide that. You cannot waive the employer's health care coverage. So even if the employer doesn't want to and you wanted to waive it, you couldn't if you wanted to receive that $300 stipend. This next section is our letter from Mr. Loftman, his legal opinion. It talks about, and I'll try to outline it best. You can read it if you like. The very end, it says, even if we could, he kind of reiterates that, even if we could do that, even if OPERS said we could waive their insurance and make them take OPERS coverage, therefore it is my opinion that unequivocal policy language, and would you like to explain this? Maybe our law director could actually talk about this for a minute better than I could.
That's no problem. So essentially, from reviewing Mr. Loftman's memorandum on the subject, he cites three reasons why we can't do this. Number one, under Ohio law, the Ohio Public Employee Retirement System has the ultimate authority in determining the rules for retirement benefits for the benefits of Ohio public employees. Not city councils, not boards of commissioners. OPERS sets the rules, and they've noted, Mr. Loftman noted that fire and police pension plans are different from OPERS. School employees' retirement systems and STRS are different systems altogether. OPERS has the ultimate authority in determining the rules for coverage. And their policy, like the mayor said, while employed, your employer must provide your, while reemployed, so it pertains to retire and rehire. While reemployed, your employer must provide your primary health care coverage if it is available to other employees in comparable positions. You cannot waive the employer's health care coverage. The second point he brought up was is age discrimination issues. And potentially, if we force individuals who are at this part of their lives, are typically older and considered protected members of society, anyone over the age of 40, etc. If you do not permit them to have this type of insurance because of their age, it's based on where they are in their life, that could be considered a discriminatory practice. It says if your government provides to older employees a lesser benefit than the employer's benefits provided to younger employees, it is age discrimination. So doing this may have the unintended effect of causing potential age discrimination lawsuits at the federal level, which would not be advisable. Further, under the Affordable Care Act, an employer must offer health insurance benefits to all of its employees except for temporary, seasonal, etc. And this could potentially be an issue under the ACA. But Mr. Loftman is essentially saying that if you wanted to, even if the employees wanted to, you can't do it because of those potential factors. again, OPERS is different from Mr. Sayers is under SCRS or under STRS. It's a different plan altogether, so.
I have a question on, since I have still have the floor. A question for you. And maybe I overlooked this. Does, we talked about the superintendent, as an example being the superintendent of schools. Does that person, that individual, is there retirement, or is there healthcare involved in this? Or did they waive their healthcare?
Mr. Sayers. I actually had some conversation with Mr. Sayers. The only thing that is affected is, and he used what the school uses as a rule of thumb, 25% of their salary as a give back. So his, whatever other benefits he might receive, and he didn't go into what those all were, but his health care was not affected. Same thing, STRS would not allow that. And they're taking a 25% pay cut, or a reduction in expenses to the schools, is what he explained it as.
Now, we had, do they have anything in giving up? Do they also give up some of these other things, like, is there a loss of vacation they give up?
No.
Oh.
And
Okay,
it
they don't
didn't
give
sound
up.
like it.
Okay,
He told me
and
they give up nothing
Do they have
other.
replacement costs for, foreman, it wouldn't be a foreman, but it would be like a department head or something like
We didn't go into all those details. He said it was solely on his salary.
that. Okay, so there.
And
are
I
gonna
came
be
out and asked the
other
question, you
benefits-
still have your vacation, still have your health insurance? And he said yes,
Okay, so there
through the
wasn't,
schools.
wasn't any vacation concessions, he
Mm.
said. Okay.
Not that I understand.
All right, okay, all right, okay. Okay, I think I understand that. I don't have any other comments, questions.
Mr. Mayor.
I thought about stopping at Mr. Hoffman's letter. I would hope that would be enough to kill this item. I think it's a real bad idea to go against the advice of the law department. But then I started thinking about the financial concessions, thought it might be somewhat of a good idea to show that we're saving the residents some monies. So I did all this math, did all the comparison on what an employee that's been here for an employee that's been here for 31 years has earned all these benefits. And upon retiring and coming back, they're willing to give up those, which average up to $14,391. And this is probably going to be no surprise where I'm going with this. When I figured that out as a percentage of what this person's salary was, guess what the percentage was of that concession? 25%. So we are doing the taxpayers justice by allowing these employees to retire and rehire and give some guaranteed savings to the city. Now just think about a couple other scenarios. Say we put this law into effect and we have these employees leave and come back, or leave and go somewhere else. If they leave and go somewhere else, we either hire somebody off the street and we pay all that. Or somebody's promoted and we pay it. There never is any other savings to the city other than when they retire and come back. And it's not only the savings, it's the vast amount of knowledge that comes with these employees, their licensing, their cost savings ability. Some of our employees that have been here for 31 years come up with these great ideas how to save the city money at every corner, save the city from violations at the EPA. I truly, not only is it a bad idea to do this about insurance, it's a bad idea to do it in any form, to ask for any more concessions. Maybe Mr. Jeffries could talk about the benefits of retaining an employee like this.
Well, the mayor's touched on some of the things I want
Do
to
you mind me
discuss
giving the floor,
with you all.
and then I'll
That's
come
fine.
back?
Jeffries,
Mr. Chair?
you got the mic.
Okay, thank you, sir. Retire to rehire is a really valuable, it's a valuable management tool, it really is. It allows that retention of these highly skilled, trained, and as the mayor said, sometimes licensed folks. These are really valuable folks, and it's needed for the preservation of public health, safety, and welfare. Bottom line, it just is. A retired employee that returns to our workforce ultimately saves the city money. The mayor's discussed that. We've gone over that. In addition to that skill set that we retain, these folks ultimately understand our culture. They get our culture. They know our operations. and they begin to produce from day one, immediately. So they retire, they come back in the next day, that following morning, and boom, they're ready to go. The current policy provides a significant benefit to the city and its residents, and it allows us to retain some of these valued employees, any of these valued employees. So thanks for the floor. Those are my thoughts.
Can I just, one more? It just somewhat feels discriminatory against our own employees. The union contract guarantees that union employees receive health insurance benefits. We actually have one union member he would have still received health insurance no matter what this ordinance said because his union contract, but this person retired from another city, and now he's come and worked for us for quite a few good years we've received out of this person, and he's receiving our health benefits and everything the union contract, plus his retirement from wherever he came from. Now, this is no different than somebody retiring at the Ford plant and deciding they want to come and work for the city and drive a snow truck. It just seems unfair to discriminate against this one group of employees that we have that aren't protected by a bigger, by a union or a police union or the drop program that the police people have. We allow, and it's nothing we can't do. They retire at a certain age. They lock in their retirement. They're allowed to accumulate retirement monies for another additional 8 years and collect it as an annuity at the end. So I just don't see, and I don't want to call it picking on one group of people, but that's what it seems to be. It's just a great benefit for us, and I'm begging not to send this to the Florida Council and let us retain this tool for the city.
Mr. Dembinski, I think your hand is up first.
Thank you. Just a simple question, actually. I think it's a simple question for the mayor. If the position was vacated and we hired somebody new, or we rehired the same person, is their base salary the same?
Could be. There's one more thing in these contracts that allows you to hire somebody for the first 18 months up to 85% of the full salary. And that's a tool that's used based on their skill and knowledge. If you want to recruit somebody, you're going to pay them as close to the highest percentage of that as possible. If somebody that you think has a learning curve, you would start them at 85%. But they would. A new person would basically start at what somebody you rehired.
Okay,
and you're paying all those benefits, and there's no savings at all.
So if you've had 30 years of raises or whatnot, you're going to go back to whatever that initial salary.
Not if you're within the city. If you promote, you would still retain all those,
Oh, you would?
your
Okay.
longevity and all that.
And that new person would not, the new hire would not get that same salary. They would come in at whatever the initial salary
Yes.
would be. Okay.
More than likely. I won't say positively, but more
Sure,
than likely.
generally speaking, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Goodell?
Thank you, Chair. I don't like this plan. I'm not going to be very eloquent about that. I do applaud Mr. Winarty's thought process behind that, but it just seems like if somebody's retiring and they're wanting to come back to work, there's a reason behind why they want to come back to work, whether it's they can't afford insurance. I don't know what the ideas would be, but I just don't think it's. This to me sounds like we're penalizing somebody for wanting to come back to work, and what the mayor's presented, I just don't see that. It makes financial sense to say that. Plus the fact that the law department says that we can't do that, but I don't like that idea of penalizing somebody. I agree that maybe there's some concessions that can be made elsewhere, but on a health insurance, I don't think that's fair to anybody to not want to lose that just to come back to work. So my experience with working at a school district is a lot of times when they come back, like the mayor said, there's a lot of back stuff that they don't get these benefits or whatever, but that's a separate entity altogether because they're a union contract. They come back, they have union stuff that's agreed to upon that time, but there's a lot of cost savings in doing that, especially in the administration level. But so that's my 2 cents. I don't like this plan.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple things that I think Mr. Winarski, and I can't put words in his mouth, or I think his motive was clearly stated. We all up here have a duty fiscally to make the city's budget go as far as it can go, but still retain the best quality and I think we all understand that. And I support him on this in the fact that he wants to look at this and take into consideration maybe a different method of handling our retiree hires. Mr. Jeffries pointed out a couple of things that in management that are key that I would look at. If I was sitting on that side, I would be saying, hey, how do I have the opportunity to put the best people into this position so we don't lose service, quality of service. And we also don't have a learning curve. The training of new employees is extreme, and to get them up into the loss there of time and is key in the city especially. Although things seem to move very slow in the city, there's still things have to get done, and this only adds to that delay. So I respect the administration's arguments in regards to putting a qualified person in there. I also understand that you have employees, not all of them, that are usually driven to continue to improve, learn, and be ready to take over the mantle, have some new ideas, believe that there's new ways for things to be done, and would like to contribute in a lot of times that can be squashed. And I think that may be something that arguments have been put out there for not having a retire or rehire in whether it be school districts if you're in schools or city employees. I think the lawyer,
Michael
Hoffman,
Yeah.
I think he's onto something there with the older employees insurance and age discrimination. I absolutely can see that. I see that today as something that would be a reason why we would do this. We'd absolutely want them out of the pool because they're the most expensive. Usually the older city employees are the most expensive. I mean, they're getting the knees and the hips replaced. They're getting, they're having higher draws on their insurance. So I get both sides of this argument. One of the things that I like the idea of seeing is a give back. I don't know if this is the amount, if we still could work some more savings into the city. One of the arguments would be, we're going to offer you the insurance, we're going to offer you the health care benefits. Is it my understanding that we still have to contribute a portion to OPERS? Even when they're putting it in a drop, we still have to put our end in as well. So there's a deduction on the employee side. We'll just, for easy
It
numbers,
doesn't change.
10%, and we would match that, correct? Or put an amount in. If we're matching 100 grand versus matching a new employee coming in at 75 for that same position at the low end, that's a savings right there. I mean, that's a savings bringing them in at 75 grand, allowing them to take the retirement. That's a savings on the city's part for how much we have to put into OPERS on their behalf. So I think there could be a little bit more of a concession if we wanted to see more savings. This is something that you'd have to make the argument, and you're making the argument that that amount of savings wouldn't be enough to overcome the loss of the quality of, and we do have some excellent retiree people in this position right now. So I understand right now what Mr. Minarski had stated. I mean, when they're gone and we don't attach this piece of legislation to them as a person, is there an opportunity for us to do right by the city? I could see us coming in at their base entry wage. They're already making 80, probably 70 to 80. If they've worked 31 years, they're probably darn close to 70% already of their retirement. Then we're going to give them health benefits that are cheaper through the city than they are through OPERS. Or any public retirement insurance is so much higher. So, and we know that these employees, if they were to go to their insurance from their retirement and not come back, they're going to lose big time because our insurance package is so much better than the insurance package right now that's set up by our retirement plans. So for them, it is beneficial to them. They're actually going to make more by paying our deductibles at the city amount versus OPERS amount. So maybe there's more there to glean off that. And yet, I still agree, if they're a great employee and they're doing the job well, they've been loyal, and you're happy with them, you're gonna bring them back. And I think the key here is, if you bring them back, if my understanding is, it's on a year-by-year contract, correct? So you can, after 1 year, go, you know what? You really should retire because the effort that you're coming back as a retiree hire is not where we'd like to see it. Can you let that supervisor go after 1 year and say thank you for the 1 year? Or do you put them in a 3-year, 5-year
You let
contract?
anybody go for performance reasons. You know, it's not just somebody that's retired and come back if they're not performing. You know, anybody at any time.
Well, if you want to go a new direction, if you don't like the way, so what are your abilities, unless they're insubordinate or unless they're breaking the...
I assume if they're not performing to the highest level that they should be according to what they're getting paid, you know, if they're doing their duties, they're a good employee. I don't know where you're going with that.
I'm going
I'm
with,
saying
are you able to say with a retiree hire, like you would say when a new employee comes in, you're kind of on a probation? You've got a year or two
So
before
I would assume they're under a probationary period.
they're under probationary of, what would that be right now in
I
this
think it's
city?
90 days, I believe. I can't say that, but I believe it's 90 days for all employees.
Even for supervisors. See, I think that's something we could work in there. If we want to do this, we work it into a 1-year contract, we lower it to the entry level, keep their medical benefits, and allow you to decide after a year, each year, renew the contract or not.
I gotta believe if they worked here for 31 years, the mayor would know whether they're a good employee or not. It's not a guarantee. You don't have to rehire somebody after they've retired. They would apply for the job just like anybody else, go through the interview process and bring to the table what they offer. So it's not a given, and then council has, so if I would assume after 31 years, if you didn't know, you wouldn't be firing them after 90 days.
And you'd also, under the same logic as the ADA, as the retirement situation at the federal levels, you want to treat them the same as all employees. So you can't just say, you can't treat them differently than the younger employees.
So by contract, and that is just it, can we set these positions up for retiree hire? When you come in as retiree hire,
You're asking
can we come in as a 1-year contract?
You're asking to do the same thing that Mr. Winiarski is asking, as far as can we ask them to opt out of their medical insurance? You're asking for the city of Amherst to treat them differently, and if I was a discrimination attorney, I might have a field day with that. So I would shy away from treating them any differently than any other new hire, and proceed like they would be as a new hire.
So the idea of bringing them in as a contractor, because that was the idea. We want to bring these new employees over from other cities that have retired because they're of quality, and that's what I was told. Didn't we get a retiree hired from another city?
Several.
So how do we know that those 30 years were good, or
You go through an interview process. You interview 11, 12, 14 people, you talk to them, they come and work for you for 90 days, and hopefully they fit the bill. If they underperform, you go through the regular discipline process, and you would fire them, I suppose. There's no higher standard for somebody like that than somebody else that you hire right out of high school.
And we need to be careful too. You don't want to mistreat the Amherst employee who's been here 30 years and deny him or her this coverage, yet accept it from an employee who worked for 30 years at the city of Lorraine, retired there and rehires here. We'd be treating them differently in that regard too. So I don't see how that's fair to the individuals who work for the city for all that.
And I just don't know if there's what contract law is when it comes to whether you can set contract law.
Well, it'd be employment law, and again, I think the fear or the caveat would be is you don't want to treat your older employees differently,
Right.
worse than your younger employees.
So my question would follow up when it comes to that contract law. Would you not be treating them differently because they're not retiree hires? They're still working for you. They have not retired. Don't you enter and this could be where your argument is, or could you not say, if you're going to come in here and work as a retiree hire, you're coming in contracted under a 1-year contract. You get treated the same discipline policy, but we just renew after 1 year.
Again, I think we'd be looking at it, why are we treating that individual with a 1-year contract versus the younger employee who has all the protections that our employees deserve? So.
Okay. Fair enough. Those are the kind of questions, those are the kind of things that we need to know. What can we do to balance this out? So-
The other thing is that it would, you know, I always say, you know, don't do indirectly what you can't do directly. What you're talking about is you're doing something indirectly. You're trying to back channel what Mr. Winiarski is proposing, which is the reduction in cost. So if we're doing this because we can't touch the health insurance. I mean, a good lawyer could really ferret that through. And here we are discussing how to do that in the public sphere. So it's probably not a good idea.
President Dietrich wants to say
Um,
something quickly.
You know, this is a nice topic, but having been in business for 42 years and having upwards of 50 to 75 people employed in my employment, I would say there's nothing better than an older employee. They're very valuable. I used to try to put a younger employee with an older employee, because the technology that they have learned over the years is so valuable, and hopefully it rubs off on some of them. When I lost a guy that worked for me for 15 or 18 years, there was a big hole that I had to fill. And I don't think you understand how valuable some of these guys are. And in the field today, I still do state electrical inspections, and I hear a lot from employers on people who they cannot find in the field that they're looking for to employ them. And I think that this rehire, and I don't like parts of it, but I don't think you have much of a choice. I think it's a good thing. We have very qualified people, especially in this city, and they've got their jobs at heart. They know what they're doing. The safety service director and the mayor would have one heck of a job trying to break a new guy in and follow him around and make sure they were doing their job, especially with the employees that we have coming in with new supervision, because everybody does things their own way. But I can tell you that when I lost an older employee, it put a hole in my business that I had to fill, and it's just very troublesome. And I think this is a big advantage for us to have the people that we have working for us, especially in our little town. A big city, you wouldn't mind it so much. There's a lot more people that can take their place. But in our little town, I think it's what we do is valuable. Plus, the mayor has the option to hire and fire. And, you know, when they interview these people, they understand, both sides understand exactly what's they're expected of them. So I would say, council, you either table it till you figure out and maybe explore this more, or kill it, one way or the other. So,
Mr. Miller, you still had the floor. Did you have anything else?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just the way it's set up right now, you know, I don't think this is the direction we want to go. And I do want to clear up that I completely agree with being in a position in my regular job of understanding the importance of experience and knowledge, and how valuable that is, and how much more valuable it is to bring that back. I wanted to make sure I'm clear. The longevity payment, even if they're staying here in the city, they work 30 years in the city, then they retire, they're going to lose $8.25, that is what I'm reading that you have here, $8.25 per year of service per month per year. Wouldn't we be discriminating against them?
No, you start ask them right here. You're seen as a new employee, so you lose that longevity benefit. You're starting as if this was your first day of work.
Well, if it was your first day of work, wouldn't your salary drop all the way back down?
No, the salary of City of Amherst and municipalities, there's one salary for everybody in that position. Longevity is where you get that pay raise.
Okay. So
So everybody makes, I'm gonna pull one of them on here, electric foreman, his base salary is $55,721.79. If he quit today and somebody else hired into that position, that's his salary or her salary.
Okay, at the base. Okay.
that's your base salary. The longer you're here, after 5 years, you start collecting longevity, and that's that $8.25. It's higher for union employees. This is actually a lower benefit for these supervisors.
Okay, so that helps, because right there, that makes, my interpretation of this was an addition to your, what's called steps, for lack of a better term. Like, I've been here, there's a longevity pay for being at the same
Like private
employment,
industry, you get
but
a
there's
great raise.
also maybe steps based on your certification and licensure, what have you.
And there's some of that too.
Some of that, okay. So what you would be doing is necessarily taking them back down to the entry first step.
Absolutely.
Well, then, I don't see any reason, especially with the legal ramifications of attempting this. I don't see any reasons why we just don't leave it where it's at and continue leaving it into your hands to put the right people in and take care of it the way you see fit. And if they're not doing the job and you want to change directions, you go through the process and treat them fairly and equally like you would. So if that's the case, which my apology, I didn't interpret that line item you had there the same way. I don't support this.
Thank you.
There are a few people who've had their hands up. Mr. Winiarski, you.
I yield the floor back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ventron. Just touch on a couple things. Once again, just to go back, this all started from seeing what other communities do, and I don't think I personally feel that it's not unreasonable to ask for concessions from a retiree hire. Where did I come up with insurance? And I think it's safe to say insurance is off the table now. You give me a legal opinion, I'm not in any position to argue that. Where did the insurance come from? Well, first of all, I got the note here from OPERS saying we could do it. Obviously, we can't. We've all learned something, especially me. But the insurance came from, well, they have the opportunity to get it through OPERS, so it'd be the least painful of the concessions a person could ask for. That's where I came up with that, just to set the record straight. With regards to concessions, I looked at the total compensation package a person receives. If you look at column B once again, that's the average based upon the numbers of all the supervisors. You go to column D, you'll see that there's nothing in there for longevity, and vacation is 1/5 of what a regular or the average person gets. These numbers came from the same place, Mr. Mayor, but the compensation package is where I came up with. I look at those numbers and I see the spread, and that's where I get my opinion. And I appreciate everyone else, and honestly, thank you for everyone sharing. But that's where I came up with my opinion that it's not unreasonable to ask for concessions. I completely see where this is heading. And with that said, thank you again for all your honest opinion. It's kind of nice having a conversation. I do appreciate everyone's honest opinion. And with that, thank you.
Problem. Mr. Dembinski and then Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, first I want to say thank you to Mr. Miller and the mayor for explaining longevity pay. I was trying to apply my private sector pay scale and how that works to here, and that's where I was getting tripped up also. So first, thank you. I am 100% in favor of saving money. We should be saving money in every possible situation that we can. I'm also probably more adamantly in favor of hiring the best people for the job. I've had numerous conversations with people for as long as I can remember actually about hiring the best people for the job in certain situations. And I think we should have those options on the table. I do think that there might be an opportunity for something, but at least based off of what's been presented and the fact that legally it sounds like we can't do that. And I'm going to apologize if I use the wrong terminology, so please somebody correct me. But I'm going to move to kill this as currently presented.
That's the right terminology. Mr. Goodell.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second on the floor to kill this ordinance as it currently, or this resolution as it currently exists here. I guess we'll have a voice vote.
Comments.
Wow.
Oh, comments. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Wait a minute, I thought Mr. Jan.
You have something.
I was going
Oh.
to make the same motion.
Okay. All right, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, I don't have a problem with an employee making, according to this, $125,000 in that position. They spent 30 years building up that retirement account. They contributed into it. they're drawing off of it, but they still want to work for various reasons. So I don't see that as an issue. They paid into it. Their employer, whoever that may be on the other side, matched or paid into it as well. It was part of their compensation for 30 years. To hold that over them and say, well, you shouldn't be making that kind of compensation for that position, I disagree with that. So I wanted to get that out there. I don't want people to think that, wait a minute, they're going to be making now $125,000 in this position. No, that's their earned benefit in addition to what, and as the mayor had pointed out and we got clarification on, they're actually making on a lower wage. It's coming back in. So this, to me, I think we're set in where we need to be in the city. We're saving the taxpayer money. I support you wholeheartedly on this, Mr. Mayor. I think we're right where we need to be, especially because of the legalities that we talked about earlier. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions, I promise.
Mrs. Wasil.
I want to thank Mr. Winarski because I think we spent the last hour almost asking questions that none of us have asked before, and I think we have a much better understanding of just how we compensate our employees. So, and I know that if this hadn't been proposed, I don't think we would have educated ourselves, and it could have been many years before we had an opportunity to actually understand the compensation as well as this is coming in tonight. You have a very valuable experience, certainly to me, and I really appreciate it, Chuck, because I did not understand this. I thought I did, but I didn't. So I very much appreciate that.
Mr. Ramsey?
To go along with what Mrs. Basil just said, just as a resident, I appreciate someone bringing what may be an unpopular idea to the floor for discussion, because it takes guts doing that. And just as a citizen, I appreciate that. And I would encourage anybody on council, because you're our representatives, that you would bring something that may be viewed as unpopular initially. So we have a good discussion in the city benefits, I think, in the end. So thank you, I appreciate that.
I have one thing. Mr. Pecora, would you explain the pension benefits that are paid to the rehires?
Well, as far as their, what they receive.
Into their retirement, just the pension portion.
As far as when they were rehired, what they receive?
No, where it goes.
I'm not following.
In other words, that's put into a separate fund, I
After
take
they
it?
retire.
After they
drop.
retire.
There's an annuity.
Right, there's an annuity program where it's separate from the traditional PRS plan. That's correct.
Okay.
And there's one step to that. If they don't reach a certain age, whatever money in that annuity, they will only receive their contribution until a certain age. The portion that the city contributes will just stay in the fund and help fund all the other retirements.
Okay.
So there's up to an age where they won't receive the entire benefit of that.
Yeah, I think that needed to be brought.
And the other thing about this, that their pension that they're going to be receiving is a completely separate fund. It's been funded. It's there whether they use it or not. It's not saving the taxpayers any money to not allow them to collect that. That is there for the employee.
No, I didn't want everybody to think that they were getting their pension plus another pension.
Right.
But,
Right.
so, and Chuck, I have to agree with everybody for you bringing this to everybody's attention. I think it enlightens us to, so, thank you.
Thank you. I'll be the next to agree. I think we all know that Mr. Winiarski rarely brings anything to committee or to the floor of council that isn't at least worthy of discussion and educates us. You take your job very seriously. I appreciate that. Is there any more discussion? With that, we will take a voice vote. The motion and second is to kill this piece of legislation. Mr. Miller?
Move to kill, yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Dubinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Winiarski?
No.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. It passes 6-1. Mr. Miller?
Move to adjourn, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned at 7:51. What's that? Who's struggling not to say it sucks?
Yeah.
That was on me.
That's all right, I know. Call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 7:54 PM, May 15. We have one item, A 17-28, and that is an ordinance authorizing the transfer of funds from 201-6001-52411 to 201-6001-52501, adding it to this year's street program and declaring an emergency. Mr. Mayor, you submitted this. Would you care to comment?
I would. This all started with a conversation with our street foreman, Barney. He does a real good job with his budget. He analyzed the salt usage from last year and this year. Kind of came up with that he's got $80,000 extra dollars in his budget that we won't be spending on salt. And he actually sent a letter asking if we could possibly put that into street improvements. We had talked about this before. Spoke a little bit with Mr. Dietrich about what accounts and how to do this. And we came to the conclusion that we could take this money out of the winter street cleaning or salt fund and put it into the capital outlay for the street department and add it to this year's street program. We do need the emergency. We're real close to taking our street program out to bid, probably June 1st. We would like to put it in writing to streets to be determined, and we would work with the contractors as an addendum at that time. We've got some cul-de-sacs on our radar, some in near Valley Drive and some off of Westchester, some off of Apple Orchard that we would like to look at. No promises which one yet. We're going to analyze, see which one has the least amount of subsurface needs so we can put as much good asphalt or whatever concrete patches that we decide to do. But $80,000 with this will go a lot of way if we can add it to this year's bid for the street program.
Mr. Goodell.
Taking this money out, is that going to any way impact the snow and salt for this coming winter? I mean, is it?
We've got a significant amount of salt that we bought from last year that we didn't use. It's already at the street garage and in storage. Barney analyzed you know, kind of a worst case scenario, what we might need, and he's the one that helped me come up with this number. We do have some money left in that fund after taking the $80,000 that would get us through a really bad December if we needed to. And then, of course, January starts the whole new $190,000 worth of salt that we'll have available next year.
Okay.
So it doesn't hurt us at all.
Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Dembinski.
Thank you. Move to send to the floor of council with the emergency.
Mr. Goodell.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to take A 17-28 to the floor of council with the emergency. Is there any further comment or question? Seeing none, voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion is carried 7-0. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned at 7:58.